Part 2 of my exploration of the Navidson record, which is featured in House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Okay, so last time we had talked a little bit about the fact that Holloway and Tom were starting to come to like a little bit of like loggerheads over their competition over who can really lay claim to exploring the house. And one thing I didn't mention last time is that Navidson had actually gone down the hallway by himself a few times before they called Holloway and the rest of the reinforcements, and he actually started to get lost because he figured out like he'd gone too far. And like I said, it is so dark in there. There's no windows, there's nothing, the walls, like there's no texture to them, like there are no discernible landmarks. There's no way to figure out like really how you're going other than like the architectural features of like that anteroom, the archway that I talked about, the Great Hall, and that staircase. So actually when Davidson was lost earlier on, he hears that weird growling like 3 times. And what actually ultimately saves him is he hears his daughter Daisy crying, and he manages to like follow the sound of her cry, and he sees her like at the end of illuminated doorway. She's at like that door in the living room and she's crying, and that's how he manages to get his, or to find his way out. Chad is becoming more and more withdrawn. He spends a ton of time outside. Daisy's developing like these weird scabs all over her arms, and she's just kind of like regressing. She's becoming more and more like a baby. So Expedition 4, Holloway's getting ready to go back in. They know that they're probably going to be spending like overnight in the corridor, in wherever it is. So he brings things like cameras that they can attach to themselves. He has first aid kits, he has heat packs, they have light sticks, fishing line, they have flares, they have a hand generator, they have radios, which you will see like as they go forward cease to function. So the idea is that they're going to try to reach the bottom of the stairs. They're going to discover something new. Like that's the big thing, right? Is that they cannot accept that this thing just exists in the way that it does. It has to mean something, right? And I think any of us would feel like that. We can't just be like, there's a strange, huge like portion of my house that exists in this like darkness. I have to understand what it is, why it's there, and what it means. And that's the most frustrating thing about this book, is that you never find out. So if you're waiting for that, I'm really sorry. You're going to be disappointed. Another major difference with Expedition 4 is Holloway decides to take a rifle with him because that growl has like really shaken him up. Okay, so I'm gonna like skip. There's so much. I can't summarize all of this without skipping a little bit. But basically what you're going to care about is when they're going through this 4th expedition, they spend days down there. Okay, like they're sleeping, they bring packs of food, and they even start like commenting that things deteriorate down there. Like their shoelaces are like just kind of like rotting away. Things like buttons are falling away. And one of the characters comments is this idea that like, if I'm not actively concentrating on the fact that like I have shoelaces, it's almost as if it gets forgotten like down where they are, and these things just sort of like cease to exist. Davidson also kind of like is wondering if that sound of that growl isn't actually just the house as it kind of like readjusts itself, because that's the other thing. You're going down a hallway, which, you know, before was, I don't know, 20 feet long. All of a sudden it's 200 feet long, and there are 5 corridors jutting off to the right. You go back down, it's still 200 feet long, but maybe now there's corridors jutting to the left. Like the architecture is constantly shifting. It's constantly in flux. So Holloway, Jed, and Wax are down there. Tom is actually staying up at the top of the staircase to kind of like try to maintain some radio contact. They figure maybe it'll be easier, and then he can radio back to Navy and Reston, who are still like in the house, in the regular part of the house. What happens during Expedition 4 is Holloway loses his mind. He becomes convinced that something is following them. This thing that's growling is following them. And so at one point his paranoia gets the better of him, and he just kind of like runs off into the darkness. Wax and Jed call to him. They're like, please come back, please come back. He doesn't. So after Holloway has his break with reality, Jed and Wax realize like, okay, well, we can't leave him here. And they do wait for him for a few hours, but they also come to the realization that if they do stay down there, they're going to die. And so they decide that they're going to try to make their way back up without him. So they're going up the staircase, and they keep hearing like the crack of the rifle, and then Holloway actually comes back out of the darkness and shoots Wax. And so Jed is like, what are you doing? Holloway panics. He's like, I have to go, I'm gonna go to jail. And he's like, you're not gonna go to jail, like it was an accident, like we'll tell them what happened, like just help me get him back up. And Holloway just takes off again. And so Jed like makes the decision to try to carry Wax back up the staircase with him. As he's going up this staircase, he keeps hearing like this guttural sound, these cries, these growls. He hears Holloway screaming. And so Jed is like doing everything he can to like go as quickly as he can to get Wax to safety. So they make their way down this kind of like corridor, and they manage to like lock themselves behind, which is also new. Like usually doors down there don't lock. And so Wax and Jed are behind this door and they're waiting, like they're cold. It's also freezing cold down there. Like there's huge temperature drops. So it's cold, cold, cold. They're stuck in this room behind this locked door. They're tired. I mean, Wax has been shot. Jed is worried about him. They're going to like freeze to death. He ends up telling the camera, like, we're not going to go any further. Like there's growls all around us. There's nothing we can do. And Jed at one point holds up his camera and you just see, it's described like at this door at this end of this hall where they're hiding, the door starts to just like go crazy on its hinges because something is like hammering super, super hard on the other. While all this has been going on, so 4 literal days, Tom has been waiting at the top of the staircase for them to come back. He makes a decision to go back to camp and say, like, I don't know where they are. I can't be there. He's been alone in this cold darkness for days, and he mentally cannot handle it anymore. So he goes back, tells them what's happened, and Navidson and Reston actually decide that they're going to go down and try to find the boys in Holloway. So they find like all these traces of where they've been. They've been using this like neon marker tape to say where they've been. They're finding like packs. They're finding like pieces of like what they've left behind. Like Reston is so adamant that he's going to help that he's like bringing himself down the stairs and like Navidson has to like bring his chair. By using like some quick math, Navidson figures out that like the neon markers and the things that remain in the house have about a 6-day shelf life before they are consumed by whatever energy is in the house. They can also feel it like expanding and shrinking. Reston compares it to like an accordion. Honestly, it kind of made me think of like lungs because like the house like expands and then kind of like contracts in on itself. On the second night, Navidson, right, because he and Reston are like looking for these guys, and shocker, it takes days and days and days. On the second night, they managed, like, they're hearing like some strange cries. He ends up going down these corridors. They follow the sound and they find a door with a doorknob that locks. So we realized that this pounding on the door was actually Navidson and Reston coming to get Wax and Jed. They open up the door and like they're reunited, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere a bullet comes in and strikes Jed in the face, killing him. Reston turns around because he's brought a surprise gun that he didn't tell Navidson about. He starts like to return fire until all of a sudden the fire that is coming into the hallway stops. And later on in the Navidson record, they talk about the fact that they find Holloway's tapes in a later expedition. And we learn that after what he did, he doesn't even know what he did to Jed, but after what he did to Wax, he kind of like becomes so angry, so incensed. At first it's, I'm not gonna let this monster get me. I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna lose. It's like a game. It's a competition that he doesn't want to lose. He has to be the winner. And then ultimately he realizes that he will never win. He sits down, he gives up, and he takes his own life with his rifle. So at this point, Jed hasn't died yet, but they realize he is going to die. However, they refuse to leave him behind. They make the trek all the way up. They've managed to convince Tom to go back up to the top of the stairs, and he's throwing down like rope so that they can kind of like create a pulley and bring everybody back up. They bring Jed, they bring Wax, they bring Weston, and when it is Navidson's turn, he starts to pull up the rope, and the rope snaps, sending him back down to the bottom of the stairs. Come back for the next part. Oh my God.